Okay, what we're going to do here is just go over some very basic techniques and effects. One of the things that we use all the time is called curves. So if you come underneath the effects panel and type in curves, and then you go underneath where it says color correction and you select curves, then I can apply it to my video file. You can see I'm just dropping it on the timeline here, and that pulls up this window in the effects menu here. And so the curves is something that you're going to find also in Photoshop and many other tools as well. And so this is something I use all the time. And so right from the get-go, you can kind of see like this was shot and it's pretty hot. And so I want to just kind of bring down that brightness level so that it's a little bit more manageable. And so one of the things that you want to do with curves is notice that it says RGB here. So right now I'm affecting the whole image. If I wanted to just do reds, I can select red and bring up and down the red, but be aware that it will make it look a little more green, which isn't necessarily bad. Because you're looking at this on a YouTube video, it may kind of look wonky, but I think it's pretty good. But for now, I'm going to just go with the regular RGB. The thing about this curves is that you never want to flatline anything. You can see how it's flatlining over here. That basically is going to lose color information. You can see all that detail is gone from his face. And so now what I want to do is actually just kind of bring up the black levels, and I can also create several dots. And each dot can work by itself, essentially kind of locking it into place. So at the bottom end here is the black level, and this is the white level up here. So if I just want to bring down some of the black level, and I'm looking not so much at the things in the background, I'm always watching for his face. His lips are looking really super pink, so I might actually go in here and just kind of bring down the red a little bit, and that's looking a lot better. And if I want to turn off the effects just to see how it was shot and how it's looking, you can kind of see that immediately it's looking a whole lot better. So that essentially is curves. And also you notice that you have a little icon here so that if I want to, I can change this over time. So if I turn on the keyframing stopwatch and then I go back, and then I'm going to just bring these things back to their starting position just so you can kind of see it change over time, more or less. So now as it goes through time, I'm going to create a work area here. So this is my beginning and this is my end. I change the resolution down to 1/3 so we can actually watch it. Okay, so now you can see it changing over time. And if you want to see those keyframes, you can twirl it down and go to the effects. And here's the curves. And the curves, here's our beginning keyframe. So if I want it to change a lot quicker, just so that we've got less time to make you sit and watch, let's go ahead and just play it here. You'll see it changes over time. So that is curves. What I'm going to do now, instead of using curves, I'm going to use something called levels. So if I type in levels, you'll see that you don't want the animation presets, you want the color correction one, and not auto. You're going to take this 32-bit levels and you're going to drop it on the timeline on the actual clip, and then you're going to get this window up here. Now when you are doing things in levels, a lot of times you're going to want to eliminate anything where there's no information. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this over here so that I can kind of get rid of anything there that's not being used. And I'm going to take this mid-range. So this is going to be our highs, our middles, and our lows. And so the mid-range is also called gamma. So if I have something that's shot too bright, I can just bring down this middle one by just dragging it to the right. And it will immediately change the brightness value of it as well. And this is a histogram, which is something you should become familiar with. And the histogram is showing us what we're looking at, just to kind of see what the different things do. If I want to bring down the black levels, I'll come down over here. But you'll start to see that where there's black, it's starting to lose detail, and that's called crushing black. And we don't want to do that typically. So I want that detail in the black. And if with whites, you can also bring up and down the whites as well. And I'm going to just work with gamma typically when I'm working with levels. Okay, so that is levels. So if I come underneath here, and I'm going to type under this effect, let's go under here and just start typing saturation. And you're going to see something here. It says hue and saturation, and this is a very common one as well. So I'm going to drop that again on the actual clip. It's going to open it up in here. And so now you'll see you have these other tools that are waiting for you to use. And again, everything is animatable, so you can change this over time. But saturation, if you want to make something black and white, you can bring down the saturation. Saturation refers to color information. And so if I just bring it down, now it is all black and white. And on the other side, if you bring the saturation all the way up, you get very garish, horrible looking colors. But if you need a little bit more color information, you can do that in this tool as well. And then you can also work on the individual colors. So let's say you want less red, and so I can desaturate the reds a little bit. And maybe I want more greens, so I can saturate the greens a little bit more. See, a shirt's getting kind of green. And so that gives me the ability to kind of change. And you'll see here, these are showing me the range of what it calls green. Here it's showing me the range of what it shows as red. And so you can also drag these around as an option as well. And to reset everything, you have a reset button. And these reset buttons typically live inside of every effect, so you can always reset things the way you want them to. All right, so that would be the color. And so the other thing is a lot of times people want to change color over time. And so what you might do is, you bring it to the beginning, you're going to turn on the stopwatch, and then you're going to go to hue, and then move the timeline forward. And now we're going to change the hue to something terrible. And so what that's going to do is it's going to change the colors over time through the various phases, which is pointless, but just to give you an idea, that's one way of animating that. So I'm going to reset that. So that's hue and saturation. Okay, I also want to introduce you a little bit to something called blending modes. Okay, and so what I want to do here is, first I'm going to do is I'm going to improve the look of this, and the first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to go underneath levels, and I'm going to apply levels, and I'm just going to make it a little less bright so it looks better. Just my son and the dog walking, nothing special. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to incorporate another layer, and I showed this in class. So let's say I'm going to pull in, so if I pull up this video file, you can kind of see that this has got like just a lot of grunge looking things. Let's see what else I got. I got this thing. So I'll show you how these different things look, but let's start out with this film clutter. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my comp window, and I'm going to put this film clutter on top of it, and you can see that it is very, very small. So I'm going to just scale it up. I hit the letter S and scale it up so it's big. All right, and also it's not running very long. You can see that this is a very short clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch it out. So you can see over here where it says stretch. If I just stretch this, I'm extending, basically slowing down and also extending that footage. And so now that is sitting on top of it. Okay, so underneath these tools here, I'm looking for something that says modes, and I'm not seeing it in this window here. So underneath where it says the source name and all these other things here, if I hold down the control button or right click and I click on where it says columns, you'll see that there's all these other things in here that you can do. And one of them is modes. So I'm going to select modes, and underneath modes now it says normal by default, which means nothing has changed. And so what I'm going to do is if I click on that, now I can select one of these other types of blending modes. All right, so blending modes differ from a dissolve. Instead of just changing the opacity, what I'm doing is I am having the colors interact with each other in interesting ways. And a good way to think about these things is they're divided by these lines here. And so all these are going to make it look darker. All these are going to make it look brighter. These are going to sort of overlay them evenly. And this is always going to get kind of wonky. So I'll show you what they look like. But if we start with darken, so I've added that footage on top of this dog footage, and it kind of makes this interesting sort of look to it. Okay, if you don't like that, let's go ahead and try to make it brighter and see what it does. That one actually looks a little bit more interesting. It has that sort of filmic quality to it. And let's go ahead and try overlay. Okay, that's interesting. And then difference always makes it look crazy, which no one probably would ever use, but you never know. Okay, so let's say I don't like this footage at all. I could always go back and put it back to normal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this film footage with some other kind of background. So let's go ahead and take this one here, which is called AB Real Textures. And I'm going to put it in my work area here. I'm going to stretch it so that I have more to work with. And it's probably way too small, which it is, so I'm going to hit the letter S, scale it up so it's really big. And now let's go ahead and start with darken. And now we have this kind of pointless looking thing. Overlay shows you how these two interact with each other. And now we're going to have add, makes it brighter. And then we have difference, of course, which is going to make it look kind of psychedelic. Okay, and I'm going to just do one more just to show you how different effects work. And here's one called Moody Wash. Let's try that one. Well, that one is, at least it's a good size. And I'm going to scale it up again because this is SD footage. And we're going to mess with these blending modes. And again, we're going to, usually you want to do it on the one above it as opposed to the one below it. And we're going to add darken first. It's not wild about it. And then here's add. That one actually sort of gives it a nice washed out, interesting sort of look with these flares in there. And now let's try overlay. Overlay is pretty good. And then we have difference, of course. And then you have these other ones. So you have different things you can play with, but a good starting point, like I said, is these top ones of each of these separated areas here. And these other ones have to deal with alpha channels, and we'll get to those later in the class.